Hello, my name is Alicia, and my maiden name was Almanza, and now I'm married, and my last name is Reyes. I was born in Edinburgh, Texas, which the area which they call the Rio Grande Valley, and I am the daughter, or the oldest daughter, of immigrant parents, which came to the U.S. from Mexico. Before that, my mom or my grandma was going to give birth to my mom in Texas, but because there was no medical help, she decided to cross the river, the Rio Grande, and she barely made it to a house right there in Laredo, Mexico. So there she gave birth to twin girls, of which one of them was, of course, my mom's sister, and because the other one was the cutest, the ladies of that house just hovered over her, and she caught some kind of disease, and of course passed away. But my grandparents lived in, I believe it was Uvalde, Texas, and at that time, one of my uncles, which they called him Tanito, and that's the name, that he was going by, had joined the army, and he fought for the United States in those wars, probably like the 40s maybe, and he was doing very well. But when my mom gave birth to my mom, and they decided to just go ahead and stay right there in northern Mexico. And as my uncle was in and out of, the war, one day he went home with his parents and caught some kind of disease, and he died over there. But he did serve for the U.S. in those wars, so we're proud of him. And so therefore then my mom, of course, grew up, and she came to the U.S. and she met my father too, who was from Mexico, and then they got married in 1949, I believe, and they live in the Rio Grande Valley. Then, of course, I was born in my early years, around 5, 4, 6. Since they were illegal, we were deported several times back to Mexico, and I can remember being put on a bus and going back, and then, of course, I don't know, we just came back. So they, they just decided to come, and they were doing field work, mostly like picking cotton, picking oranges. It was mostly field work. Construction work, whatever they could find. My mom, though, she was a stay-home housewife, and she, after my two brothers were born, she would do ironing for several women in town. I used to tag along with her, and I remember one lady that she was doing ironing for. That lady had a preschool, and she had children there of parents that could afford to send their children to private preschool. Yet I was there, and I was never offered to join the little preschool or anything, which is fine, but I was just happy little girl, But learning what my mom was doing, ironing, washing dishes, I saw nothing wrong with that. And so we lived in Edinburgh, Texas, for a good time, and I went to elementary school there. I believe the school was Travis Elementary, and when I was like in first or second grade, I joined the Girl Scouts, and so one time the Girl Scout leader asked us to bring a rag for the next meeting. So I'm like, ooh. I didn't know what a rag was until somebody explained to me, because several things I didn't know what they were, since when I used to go home, it was mostly Spanish speaking, so I wasn't too up on my vocabulary. And so then that was a fun time. and then we moved to another school there, Stephen F. Austin Elementary, and we moved around the Rio Grande Valley, and to me it was fun times. I never, never dreaded any of those times. And I had an aunt and uncle and that treated me as their daughter. They didn't have any children, so they always used to take me to Sunday school. And that's where I learned to read Spanish at Sunday school. And I was so proud of myself, because I thought it was kind of neat, learning to read another language besides English. I didn't think nothing of it, but now I know how important it is. But so then after we grew up, about maybe in my preteen years, my parents started traveling as migrants to the state. Well, you would have to see a contractor, and they would contract people and have, and then give them some money for expenses to travel to the northern states, which were like Wisconsin, and we would go work for, well, not we, but they would go work for the company Stokely's Van Camp. And we would stay at home and go to school. And I loved the schools up there, and I made friends. One of my good friends' name was Bonnie. Her name was Bonnie. And we would walk to school and while my parents were working, and we lived in this barracks. Like, it was like a long barrack, and there were like divided rooms on the left, on the right, and the showers were at the end of the barrack. And those were fun times too. I made friends, and I really, really liked the school. The teachers were nice. At that time, they treated us really, really nice. And I remember a lady in town would come and ask us to go to her house and visit, and she had a collection of dolls. And I thought it was so neat, and so therefore that's where I started learning about collecting things and things like that. And to her, dolls were important, and then I started seeing things, and seeing hobbies as a good thing to do and having to do. And at that time, the hula hoops were in, and around the camp, I was the queen of the hula hoop, because I used to twirl it around my waist, my neck, my legs, and my arms, and that was a fun time too. And so then we also used to go back and forth to Ohio, and we went to Norwalk, Ohio. That's right, Norwalk, Ohio. And again, they used to work for Stokely's, and we used to go to school there, and we walked. And I had a good friend there. I can't remember her name, but she was really nice. And we walked to school back and forth, and while my parents worked. And the priest, Catholic priest, would go to the camp and have like Catholic masses and this and that for the people. And we had a fun time. I have to say that every time I lived in a camp or something, I always made good friends, whether they were Hispanic or non-Hispanic. We thought nothing of nothing. We were just good friends. And I'm sorry that I just didn't keep in touch with them, because I would really, really like to, talk to them. But from Norwalk, we also went to Willard, Ohio. And by that time, I was already like in my teens. I might have been like maybe 17. And we used to work for this little packing company that had us in groups. The men were in one group, and they would be in charge of cutting the romaine lettuce, the escarole, and the women would work in the little packing house, bagging the radishes, the celery or whatever, the onions and things like that. And the group of young girls, like at me at that time, we would be in a group, and we would go out on flatbed trucks, and we would put rubber bands around our fingers, and it was not regular dirt. It was like black muck, and we used to pull the radishes and then tie them and make bunches, and then somebody else would come and pick them up and so forth. So we would do the red radishes and the white radishes. Once again, it was, to me, it was fun. You know, it was work but fun. And the housing there, we used to be like in a mobile home, and some people had regular houses, but it wasn't bad. The housing in Wisconsin, on another time, besides the barracks, were like, I like to call them like pigeon houses, because they were like round, and you could only stand up tall like in the middle, but in the center of the house, but then towards the left and the right, you had to duck. And so that was one, that's the thing about being a migrant, that you experience different housing, different towns, different experiences. I mean, to me, it was awesome. I mean, I never looked at the bad side of it, but it was awesome. I could never, because of the moving around and around and around, I don't know how I did it, but I used to move to different schools. I mean, it would be like maybe I could change schools 10 times a year. When in the experiences in Ohio with the radishes and the white radishes, and you know what? This was so awesome to me, because I learned the names of those vegetables, and then after that they put me inside the packing house, and they, oh my goodness, they put me loading the semi trucks, and I had to carry 50-pound potato bags from the end of the semi to the inside of the semi and fill it up for shipping. And once again, I thought it was fun. I was working with two nice guys. They were really nice. And so between Wisconsin, and then Michigan, of course, our experience in Michigan, oh my goodness. We went towards pinconning, and we did cucumbers. And I could remember I would stand at the end of the row of the cucumber, and I kid you not, I would stand and look to the front, and you could not see the end of that road of that cucumber plant. It was like to the horizon, and I'm like, okay. And so then that was bending work. You could not do that standing up. You had to bend. So you can imagine from 7 a.m. bending down, you know, picking the nice cucumbers. They would have to be in baskets, and that was an all-day job to about 4:35. And we saw nothing wrong with it, you know, we just did our job. From there we went to Alpena, Michigan, and we did strawberries at Alpena. And of course, that one was on our knees, and we would pick our little strawberries. We had our crates and filled the little boxes. And the one thing I always did was look at the biggest one, the reddest one, and wipe it and eat it. So then I was good to go. We went from Alpena, we went to Traverse City, Michigan. And therefore, there we did cherry. It was during July. And I remember one time, it was early, the cherries were gorgeous. And of course, once again, I would pick the reddest ones and eat a few. And oh boy, that was a big mistake, because I got really drowsy and a little sick to my stomach. But I learned my lesson, good. But then after Traverse City, we went to Ionia, Michigan. That was about the center of Michigan. And we picked apples, red delicious apples. And that we did that job until about the end of September, up to the time that snow flurries were already starting to come down, and we barely made it and we did the job for the farmer, and the apples were picked and harvested. We went all around Michigan. Wisconsin was only like Columbus, Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. And one thing that we did for fun in Columbus, Wisconsin, we used to go to the drive-in theater. They used to have like a little playground in the front, and we used to go out and play and then come back and watch the movie. So that was a little bit of entertainment, you know. So that was fun. I mean, I, saw, nothing wrong. I would living like real, these experiences were like no one can ever get to me. And then we did Ohio, we did Michigan, we did Wisconsin, we did Indiana. Indiana was the tomatoes on the ground. Once again, back breaking, bending down, and you flip the plant like the cucumbers and pick the tomatoes and then flip it again, and then you would move and so forth. And in Indiana, our housing we lived in an old schoolhouse. It was fun because we were all like there, all families together, this and that. And the other state we went to was Illinois. Illinois was an experience in itself. We also lived in barracks, and cooking was done in a barrack, and there were like picnic tables on the right, and the stoves were on the left, and everybody had a box where they put their groceries right there in front of their table. In Illinois, I went to school to the one-room schoolhouse. Boy, that was really fun. It was an experience like you wouldn't believe, because the teacher had us, since we were seasonal, they hired the seasonal teacher. They had us in rows: 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and I don't remember, there was kindergarten. But that's how she separated us. And then she would direct the teaching to the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th. And she took us on a field trip to a grocery store. We weren't allowed to go to the regular school, because I guess we were seasonal. We were not going to stay there long. We were just going to be there for a while. But at the grocery store, she took us to the vegetable aisle, and well, voila, that's where I learned the difference between a lettuce and a cabbage. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So I did learn something. Everywhere I went, I was learning. I mean, I was just learning. I'm picking up like a sponge. And she also talked about when we went down to the school, back to the classroom, she showed us a map of where we came from, where we would go, what states, and she would show us, this and that. And that experience helped me help my parents with their roadmap. So, my mom knew a little bit, but we would put it on the hood of the car, and then I would help them, and with mom's help, we would place our route, and as to where we were going and this and that. After India working in Ohio, I can remember at age 17, I visited Cedar Point, Sandusky, Ohio. Wow, what an experience. And I did go back a few years ago. I couldn't believe it. I made it back. And then, so we worked at Ohio, we worked in Indiana, Illinois, we worked in Michigan, Wisconsin, then in Tennessee. We worked in Tennessee. Tennessee, we worked on, I believe it was tomatoes and strawberries. And there was a couple there where when we were working on a strawberry farm that wanted to ask my parents if I could stay with them. And they would educate me and so forth. And of course my parents said no. And then, which was, okay, I think I would have missed them. Then from Tennessee, we would come to Florida, Texas, north, and then to the Carolinas. The Carolinas too, we went to North Carolina, South Carolina, and I remember an experience in South Carolina my mom did not have a babysitter, so we would stay in the car while they were working in the field. And us being kids, uh, we went to the trash bin or whatever that was area, and we just fiddle, faddling. And I remember I climbed a brick wall that was like maybe 3 foot high or something. And then my brother said, "Oh my gosh, here comes the boss," and this and that. And I jumped. And when I jumped, my foot landed right smack at the bottom of a glass jar, and I cut my foot really bad. So, of course, I was taken to the doctor. Then I was stitched. Then I had to stay home and not walk or move, for quite a few weeks until I healed. In North Carolina, though, when I was older, we worked in the gladiolas. Believe it or not, there were gladiolas out there in the mountains, gladiola fields, and we used to go out there in the morning and cut the gladiolas all day. And South Carolina was tomatoes, and then we of course go back and forth. But the first time I believe that we came to Florida was in like maybe 58 in Fort Myers, and we used to live where the John Deere tractor company is right now by 75. There was a camp there, and they would take us in a big open truck to North Fort Myers, and we would pick bell peppers for $7.50 a day. So it was my mom, my dad, and myself. I was old enough to work, and so they would have me working and give my money, of course, to help the family. And my brothers and sisters went to school. I don't know if I was breaking the rule or not or what, but between coming to Florida and doing that kind of migrant work, sometimes we would come down towards this way and work in tomato fields. And then we would not stay in Bonita yet, but then we would go back to Texas, and that's where I got a lot of my schooling. This time it was not South Texas, it was West Texas, around the Lubbock, Amarillo, Plainview area. And that's where I finished my elementary school years, and then I managed to do my junior high. And I did not get a chance to go to high school there, but I did manage to go to high school, a little bit of high school in Ohio. We were moving back and forth. It was so difficult for me to keep a hold of my credits. I mean, it was just major difficulty. I mean, I was switching high schools like day and night. And so, but I grasped what I could, and then eventually they came back to Fort Myers, my parents, and they started working on the orange groves now. Picking oranges, and my dad had a crew of picking oranges, and also I think that was towards Alva. And then when they would start coming down this way towards Bonita and south towards North Naples, it was tomatoes. And we also did some bell peppers off of Corkscrew. And we also did some gladiolas off of Corkscrew, and we did gladiolas off McGregor. I believe it's when you get off College Parkway there, coming from Cape Coral to the right. I'm not sure if that place is called the Lansdowne, I'm not sure. But that was all gladiolas fields, and we cut gladiola plants there. And once again, it was fun. So we were going back and forth when I was getting my schooling in Texas. And one thing we did do in Texas as we were in school, my mom was smart enough to have us hoe cotton during the summer so we could work for our school clothing. We would save money, or she would save our money, so we could earn money to be ready for August for school. And she would take us to Amarillo, Lubbock, and buy some clothing. But she would also make my clothes. She would make some dresses out of flour sacks, and I loved them. My father didn't get paid much. He would get paid like maybe $50 a week to work on the farm, and we had to take whatever housing they would give us. Most of them didn't have bathrooms, so we had to use the outhouse, and that was something that was not. I didn't like it, but that's something you had to get used to. And then, of course, to take a bath, you had to put the tub in the bedroom and then warm your water and take a bath. And one thing I would do was in charge of making sure my socks were clean for school. So I would take the tub and use that scrubbing board and wash my socks and hang them and make sure that all my socks were ready for school. I was responsible in that sense, I don't know. But anyways, so we started seeing Florida, and my aunt and uncle started coming to Bonita, and so they started sticking around here about 1958 and towards the early 60s, and my mom and dad were in Fort Myers, and we used to go back and forth to the tomato fields, and a lot of the times I would stay with my aunt and uncle, and that would be right there off of Beach Road, which is Livingston now. There used to be a dirt road, and on the left you have those roads there, and they used to live there in a little small trailer, and I would stay with them. And at that time I was like 17, 18, and but we were still struggling with migrant work back and forth, the housing, this and that, and the one thing we never had help with food stamps. My mom and dad never asked for food stamps. I don't know, the health department, I don't even know if that existed. We just went to regular doctors, and we went to like regular school when we could. We never had help with like the pre-K programs or anything like that, nothing like that. We just struggled on our own. And then while we were here in Bonita off and on, and then going back to the Carolinas, then that's where I met my husband. He was working, I had already seen him here in the fields, but thought nothing of it. Then we went to the Carolinas, and then we kind of started talking, and then came back, and we decided to be boyfriend, girlfriend. And of course my dad didn't like him, and so he tried to make it very hard for him, and we were working in the gladiola fields here in off of Corkscrew, and we would get in rows, go together, cutting our gladiolas, and when we get to the end where my dad was, he would send him over there and me the other way. On the way back, we'd come back together. But it was, an experience, but we finally got married, and we were living with my aunt and uncle here. Actually, we got married in Fort Myers. We got married in St. Francis Xavier, the Catholic church on Cleveland Avenue. And we had our reception at the National Guard Armory. We were the first ones to have a dance there, a reception. And then afterwards, some other people rented the hall too for receptions and this and that. That was in 1972, and that we got married. And then They came, they put all our wedding gifts in a van, and they came and brought the van to one of the little houses over here in North Naples. It was a camp. It was little houses, and we had no vehicle, but they just dropped us there. And my husband got a job with the field worker, and he was working in the tomato fields. He was illegal. He came over when he was 17, and on the way he turned 18. He crossed the border, and he went to a place in Texas, and he was supposed to go to Colorado, I believe, with a group to Colorado and the state of Colorado, and somebody from Florida was looking for workers, and so his group that was supposed to come to Florida wasn't there yet, so he's recruited whoever wanted to come to Florida, and my husband said, yeah, I'll go, Instead of waiting for the Colorado guy, he came to Florida, and he says when he got here, he's like, oh my goodness. He had never seen anything like this. The tomato fields, the word, he's like, oh my gosh, I honestly wanted to go back. He's like, it was like something I knew, it was new to him. He had never seen anything like that. And he was living in this, I believe it's called Camp Sandy right here by the railroad outside of Bonita. And then we were going back and forth. And that's when I saw him out there in the field, but I thought nothing until we went to the Carolinas, and we started talking. Then we came back, of course, we became boyfriend, girlfriend, and we started traveling too as migrants to Tennessee and Quincy, Florida, to do tomatoes. And I kid you not, the temperature might have been like 104 degrees out in the fields, and it was so hot, but the house that we had there in Quincy, it had to be a slave house. The walls were out of cardboard. There was no bathroom. There was no stove, no refrigeration. So we had to have a cooler, put ice so we could put milk or maybe a piece of meat or something so it wouldn't spoil. My husband said, and we already had our son, he said, this is the last time we're going to do this. We're not going to do this anymore. We're going to go to Tennessee, and then we're going to come back, and that's it. No more migrant traveling. We went to Tennessee. Before I went to Tennessee, I came back, and we came back to Fort Myers, and I started looking for a job. I believe it was in maybe 75, and one of the programs was called the CETA program in Fort Myers. And I remember the lady there, her name was Elaine, and she said she could get me a job in a school as an assistant. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she got me a job as an assistant at Alba Elementary. And I met some teachers there, I worked for them, and I learned a lot of things about being an assistant, working with children and things like that. And one of the teachers became very friendly, and we to this day are very good friends. Her name is Irby English, and her husband's name is Jim English, and they have a son named Trey English, and they are like pioneers of Alba, Florida. And to this day, we are very, very good friends. And so at the end, during the time that I was an assistant, one of the teachers who just passed away, Miss Ahern, she said, you know what? How about for extra activity, why don't you teach some of the children Spanish? I said, oh, okay, so I didn't see nothing, wrong with that. So I started working with some of the children, teaching them basic Spanish words, Spanish phrases, and this and that. believe it or not, Mrs. English's son was in that class, Trey, in the 4th grade, and he picked it up. To this day, he graduated from a big university and is fluent in Spanish because of that little Spanish lessons that those Spanish lessons that I gave to him. He is fluent in Spanish. I believe he's a robotics engineer right now, up in New York or something, and he speaks fluent Spanish. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe the good that I did, and so therefore, then at the end of the year, I got bumped out. And that's where I learned about bumping out. And that meant that because I was the last one hired, I didn't have a job for next year. And so therefore, I said, oh, okay. So then Mrs. English read this article in the newspaper about a bilingual program starting in Lee County. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, you would be so good at this. I said, you think so? She's like, yeah. She's like, why don't you go talk to them and see? And so I did. I went to the district office, but at that time it was like on Central Avenue, part of it or all of it, I'm not sure. And I have talked to Miss Aurora Abad and Mary Johnson, whom she may rest in peace now. She was a great lady. And they hired me, but they said I needed my high school degree. Of course, I'm like, ooh, my credits were all over the place. Being a migrant, I could not get a handle on my credits. I mean, where would I even begin? I was this high school, that high school, that high school, this state, that state. Oh my goodness. So what I opted to do, I did by mail high school instruction, and then I took the test. Then I went and did my GED here at the vocational in Fort Myers, and I passed it. At that time, I went to Tennessee. I was in Tennessee when I heard that I had passed. I'm like, yay! So then we came back, and we were in East Fort Myers with my parents, and my husband was picking oranges right there in Alva. He was picking oranges, and he was under a tree taking a break, and he said he saw these feet coming towards him. And then it happened to be Border Patrol. And they asked him for his papers, of course. He said, no, I don't have any. I'm here illegal. They're like, oh, okay. So then they gave him a paper. This was around May. They gave him a paper to leave the country by August. He left the country. I stayed here with my son, who was a toddler. He might have been 14 months. And I had to work. My husband was in Mexico. We were trying to get a visa going. My aunt and uncle live here in Bonita, so I came and stayed with them while I was working at the Naples Tomato Growers. And they would babysit my son. And so here I am back at Bonita. Remember, I started coming here when I was like 1958, off and on. Then towards the early 60s, and then working, passing through, living while I was a migrant, going back and forth, this and that. And now I'm like 21, 22, and I'm staying here because I need to work to help support my husband in Mexico and my son. So we were living right there off of Livingston, and the road was dirt. The bridge was a wooden bridge, and there was a 2-story house right there with a big, big tree and no Bonita Beach Road. I think it was only maybe 2-lane, a very small 2-lane road. And everything wooded. When I was in my 17s, 18s, I can remember that Beach Road was all woods towards the beach, woods, because I know my brother used to go to the beach off of where I think it's Hickory Boulevard. You turn to Fort Myers Beach and then in, And all that was grass, tall grass, woods, nothing was built there, nothing, 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 nothing. All woods, no new 41, no nothing, nothing. The dome was here. I remember where that Bonita Auto Center is right there. The shell factory and the anchor. And we used to go there. The whale's tail, we used to go there and eat lunch or dinner, whatever, whenever we had money. And but my hours at the packing house were gruesome. Oh my gosh! Sometimes you had to work until 2 in the morning, 2:30, and then come back at 7. And oh my goodness! And that was rough because you had to stand there and grade in the back. Your back would just hurt so much, and standing, your feet, but I had to work to support my son and my husband. So while he was over there, I was trying to get whatever documentation he needed to come over. A year passed and he still couldn't get through. So then I went to Juarez, Mexico. And I had to live in Juarez, Mexico because my husband could not come over and my son had to go with me. I had to take my car with me. And then I had to look for a job while I was in Juarez, Mexico, but not in Mexico. I had to look for a job in El Paso. And I found one at the Ferris Lex. And they didn't, in Ferris Lex, it's mostly sewing. They did not give me a job in a sewing machine, but they gave me a job picking collars because I had problems with my vision. And so they always put you on a quota. I had to pick 1,150 or 1,050 collars a day. So what I would do, I would meet my quota and then save like 100 for the next day and not count them in, but I was getting a little bit of a head start. So the problem there though was that Juarez was in a different time zone, El Paso was in a different time zone. I'm like, okay. So then I had to kind of adjust myself in Mexico to be El Paso time so I could be in time for work. And I would drive in my car back and forth and I'm like, and they're like, have you ever lived here before? And I said, no. Well, you're doing pretty good in driving. I'm like, well, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. Come to the stop sign and honk so they don't hit you. So my husband only earned $20 in Mexico. He was doing body work building. And I don't know how much I earned in Farah, but I had enough to make the car payment and a little bit over for food and rent. And that was a hard time. We had some hard times right there. And still trying to get the documentation, we would go see the American consulate and he would say no. And we're like, oh no. And then here we go again, try again, try again. Finally, some company in El Paso gave him the support letter that he needed, support letter of employment. And it was for a painting company. And then I got another job from Farah. I applied to Mountain Bell, the telephone company, and they hired me. And so then I had that letter. So we both had 2 good letters to support us saying that we weren't going to depend on the U.S. government for anything. And that's what got us through. And we went to, gave us a day to pick up his visa at the border, right there at crossing the bridge. And so we were sitting there waiting for his visa, for him to be called. And I looked around, I said to my husband, why does everyone have suitcases? I'm like, me. And I'm like, I don't understand why everyone has suitcases. So I finally opened my mouth and I asked, Señora, ¿por qué trae sus maletas? Why do you have your suitcase? And she said, oh, it's because when you get your visa, you got to go back. And then, you're good to go. So I turned to my husband, I'm like, okay, well, if you get your visa, why do you have to go back? Does that make sense? You get your visa, you can go forward. We didn't have nothing packed. But anyways, you can imagine the thinking of the people. I guess they were, I don't know. But anyways, he got his visa, and it was so cold because it was close to Christmas. My husband's mustache was full of ice. His eyebrows, his hair was ice from, where he had combed it. And we went back, packed our car, and voila, came into the United States and did our jobs. And then after a few years, we came back to Florida, and that's when I got that job at the Alva Elementary, and I got bumped out, and then I got recommended for the the bilingual program. At the bilingual office, they said, school starts, I believe, in August, but you will not get paid until about October. You would have to volunteer your time until then. And I said, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem. So I did. I volunteered my time and came to find out, I think my hiring date was around maybe September 13th or something like that. We started training for the program to see what we were going to do with children, how we were going to work with them, and this and that. And my husband was working in the fields, and we were kind of still migrants, half migrants, and but we were renting a little mobile home on Orange River Boulevard. And then when it was time to place us in the schools, there were 3 ladies that wanted the school in East Fort Myers. I lived in Orange River, another one lived on Ballard Avenue, and the other one lived in LaBelle. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, the lady that lives in Ballard, she's by herself, she doesn't have a husband. And the lady from LaBelle, oh my goodness, she comes all the way from over there. It would only, make sense that they get the positions here at East Fort Myers. So I asked my husband, I said, would you mind if I asked them to assign me to Bonita? If they could send me to Bonita, would you mind moving to Bonita, and get a job over there? And I said, because I want to help these ladies. One of them is by herself, and it only makes sense that she stay here at the school, and whereas and you and I can move down to Bonita. So he's like, yeah, maybe I can ask my godfather for work down there in the fields. And I said, oh, okay. So then we came, and the first thing we did, we started looking for a place to rent. So we found a home on Sunray Drive, a mobile home. It was still dirt, I believe, dirt road. And yes, the Livingston Road was closed. All that was woods. And the bridge was, I believe, I think it was still wood. And so they assigned me to Bonita Springs Elementary as a bilingual assistant. And then my husband looked for work in the tomatoes, and he was working in the fields, and I was working in the school as an assistant, and we had my 2-year-old son. And at that time, they had pre-K in the schools in Bonita, and for some reason, my son and my other children never qualified for those programs. Okay, so I sent my son to the Assembly of God Church daycare that was right here where the art center was, and that's where he found out that one of the students told him he was brown. And I said, oh, okay, well, you are brown, and they are white, you are brown, that's fine, there's no problem there. And but he's your friend, right? And he's like, yes, we're friends. I'm like, okay, that's all that matters, The skin color doesn't matter, And so he spoke English, and he had trouble speaking. So my husband and I made a decision that if he's having trouble speaking, we might as well let him learn English instead of Spanish. So, to this day, he only speaks English, but that was because he had a speaking problem. And we didn't want to make it any harder for him. So we opted, of course, it only makes sense that he speaks English. So, yeah, that was fine with us, no problem. And so we rented that home, and then a few months later, the owner put a for sale sign, and we're like, what? And the owner happened to be the Fletchers that used to do the lighting up in the corner over there of Bonita Graham. And they were part family or a family of those people and so forth. And they said, well, do you want to buy it? And we're like, buy? And so we made a deal, and we wheeled and deal and came to an agreement, and we bought the mobile home, and that's where we lived. And I came to work to Bonita Elementary, and the principal was Dr. Bert Talbert, which I'm forever grateful, because we became very good friends. I was a bilingual assistant, and after school we used to go and hang out and with him, the music teacher, and I. There was no I'm higher than you or nothing like that. No, we just got along well. I don't know what it was. And then my husband said, all right, we've got the home. We never applied for food stamps no matter what. We did with what we could with what we had. And I can remember at the mobile home, the refrigerator went out. And we, for several months to almost a year, when my second son was born, the bottom part of the refrigerator didn't work, only the freezer. So I said, okay, well, we'll put the milk in the freezer, and when it's time to heat it up for the baby, I'll just heat it up, and it's okay, because we didn't have money to buy a refrigerator. We just did what we could. Thank goodness I had a washer, and I had no dryer, and I had the nicest clothesline, but every time it would rain, we had to quickly, everybody, come on, let's go get the clothes off the clothesline, and we had to run every time it rained and get the clothes in so it wouldn't get wet. Then the program started this other program where all the ESOL assistants would go to college classes on Monday, and then we would work Tuesday through Friday at the school. And so I told my husband, and I'm very studious. I mean, if I like to read. If I could read 24/7, that would be my awesome thing to do. But then we started, and I gained so many credits. Then I hadn't gotten my 2-year degree, and when they said, okay, we're done with the Monday classes, if you want to continue, you can do on your own. If not, you can stop there. So, but we still had our jobs, and I decided that I was one of the few that decided to continue, and I did, and I got my associate's degree at, it used to be Edison, and my second son had just been born like 2 or 3 weeks before, and I got my degree. I had a really nice experience, learning experience, and in fact, in college, that's where I learned to make my husband's favorite salad, in speech class. And my second son was born, then my daughter was born, and I said, all right. So I was working at the school. By this time I had 2 sons and a daughter. My husband's still working in the fields, and we were all here in Bonita. We can still remember that the changes were just happening around us. like you wouldn't believe. I mean, the changes. Longhorns used to be on the left side of Bonita Beach Road, then it was on the right side of Bonita Beach Road, then pretty soon Longhorns was gone, but Sunshine Ace Hardware is there, and Bonita Beach Road was all wooded, like I said before. Then all of a sudden it starts building, something here, something there. Then all of a sudden you hear a 41, new 41 going through, and then my husband was working on the fields behind where we live. Next thing you know, I'm taking lunch to him across Interstate 75 when it was being built, and we're like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? And but he used to come a lot to the Dome, like I said before, and the Whale's Tail over here, and Dairy Queen. We used to love to go to Dairy Queen, where the donut place is now, and Benson's. We always used to come to Benson's, and still do. Let's see, and all of a sudden, I mean, just before your eyes, I mean, changes just change after change after change. We were busy with school, events at school. I always had my kids helping, Little League, and so we were going back and forth. And after my daughter was born, I took 10 years off from classwork. I had gotten my AA degree at Edison, took 10 years off of classes. Then I started classes again via Nova University, and I got my Bachelor's in Science of Elementary Education. And that was only because I had been in the system for so long in every grade that the teachers said, and the principals even had me helping the migrant children without, you know, and they had faith in me. And the teachers would say, well, just finish the degree and get the paper. That's all you need, the paper, the certification. I'm like, okay. So I did, and I got my Bachelor of Science degree. Then university that I went to started a branch here in Bonita, and they hired Dr. Carrie Robinson, I believe, was the director there, and she hired me right here. They were right here on Pine Haven, and she hired me to be like a receptionist. And through them, because I was working there, I got waiver for classes and continue my master's in ESOL, which they call it TESOL, but it's ESOL. And still working at the school, keeping up with the school events. My husband still a migrant, working in the fields, and then my children going through the same school that I was working at, Bonita Springs Elementary. As I still continue working for the university, I got to meet a lot of people that went there for classes. A lot of the principals that are now, a lot of the district coordinators that are now in the district. I met a lot of people via that job there. And then later on, I continue with my specialist in educational leadership. And I got that degree. So now I ended up with a specialist in ed leadership. Nobody gave me anything except I earned it. I earned it on my own. And even while I was earning it, nothing came easy, nothing, because it's not like, you know, you pay somebody and, you know, we'll give you the, no. You had to earn it, and like anybody else. You know, my parents supported me in as much as they could, you know, but there was, you know, sometimes they couldn't do so much. My husband supported me as much as he could because he would take care of the children, make sure they got bathed. He fed them while I went to school. Sometimes I had to go to school in Fort Lauderdale because the class wasn't offered here in Davie, Florida. Had to travel down the alley. The university would meet at Alva. I mean, not at Alva, at LaBelle. And I would have to go drive to LaBelle for classes. And then, of course, they moved down to Bonita. All the way through, I still was in living in a migrant mode. Did not have a nice house, but just a simple mobile home, that we kept clean. We tried to, give our children too. I knew the value of education. My husband knew the value of education, and he said, let's focus on giving them an education and having credit at a department store so they could, we can get clothes that they need. And that's what we did, but we never applied for any kind of help, like food stamps or nothing like that, nothing, not. We earned it, we paid for it, to this day we're paying. I taught third grade. Then I went to third, fourth, because they had the students that they didn't know what to do with them. So let's have Miss Reyes work with them, okay? We're gonna make you a third, fourth, okay? And then they had this student that they didn't know what to do with her, so she was fifth. Okay, Miss Reyes this year will be third, fourth, fifth. So now I'm teaching third, fourth, fifth because they didn't know what to do with these students. And I have to say that those students, that fifth grader is, she went on to college. And another student that I had, she's working on her psychology degree. It probably already is a doctor of psychology. And I had a lot of students that became supervisors of landscaping company. I have a lot of students that became managers in grocery stores, and I have students that came that worked in banks. So those little students that didn't fit in a classroom got the help, the little bit of the help that I could give them and offer them. But I always thought in my mind that every student should have a good foundation in their school, that they have a good experience, that they not be traumatized, that they feel comfortable in the environment. And that's what I wanted to give them. And so, and to this day, they remember. Bonita used to be the little sleepy town, which has awoken. And we try to participate in a lot of the events, try to attend a lot of the events. We try to work well with the community. Right now, I don't per se volunteer to anyone, except I do go help Spring Creek Elementary with, because my sister works there as a pre-K teacher, and I go help in some of the events or in her class and things like that. But I don't help someone per se, but when I'm out there, like for example, I'm in a doctor's office and this person needs help with the checking in on the laptop. Sometimes you have to check in, I help them. Or maybe they need help at the post office and I help them and I translate for them. Or if they don't know how to do this, I help them. So when I'm all over town, that's, my satisfaction that I get, that I, help everybody. Somebody needs in, with this driving around Bonita, somebody needs in, go ahead. I got all the time. You may go, I don't honk, try not to honk at anybody. Why? Why do you want to honk at them? And I can remember having this little Haitian girl that was so happy to be in my class. Her name was Rose. And she always used to write me these little notes. And she was really happy to be in my class. And I gave my time and a lot of my life to the school district for just about 40 years until I retired. I believe it was in about 3 or 4 years ago. Through that time, I was happy to be, to help people. I would listen to their problems. I would try to send them to the right connections, try to help them. and I gave it all I had, and I still would, can give it all I have. And I am very proud of myself that I have contributed what I could to Bonita. And I'm very proud to be called a Benician, because yes, I've been here off and on since 1958 as a migrant worker, because I am truly was, and I truly was a migrant worker, and so is my husband. And up until now, I am very proud of that. And I am proud to demonstrate that we could move forward, earn what we our way through up until now. And I'm very proud to be a Benician, from a migrant worker to a Benician. It can be done. It can be done.